Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live session. Welcome to my live today, which is going to be the 3 ways to plan an organized and effective English lesson. So let me just find the comments here. Let me see if I can watch myself, if I can see myself live. How do you do that, guys? Do you know? I'm trying to find the comments. And in the meantime, let me know here in the comments if you are already familiar with the idea of the ESA framework. Okay, just found myself here. Get the sound. There we go. Now I can see everything that is happening here. So yes, let's get started. So let me hear from you. First of all, are you familiar with the ESC framework, ESA framework? Do you know what it means? Have you ever worked with any kind of framework in terms of teaching? Let me know here in the comments. I'm watching you over here, okay? So I'm talking to you here, but I'm watching the comments over here. The ESA framework is basically a framework that was developed by Jeremy Harmer in 1998, around 1998, and it's nothing but a set of steps that is used to help you organize your lessons, to help your lesson follow a sequence that is coherent and that makes sense, a structure that will help your students learn better, that will help your students, will help you keep a logical step-by-step procedure when teaching. So basically, this is the ESA framework. ESA stands for engage, study, and activate. So they are, the letters for this representation. So engage, study, and activate. And an acronym, this is the word I was looking for. It's an acronym for engage, study, and activate. And this is what we're going to discuss today. I'm going to dive deep into these 3 steps, describe each of them to you, and I'm going to tell you the advantages of using this technique. So to start with, in terms of the advantage, why do I like the ESA framework so much? There are many different strategies for planning a class, for delivering a class, but I do like the ESA framework simply because it is organized, logical, sensible, but mostly it is flexible. And I really appreciate this flexibility. As a teacher, having flexibility is crucial to me. It's vital. Having flexibility is very important because I don't like to feel, put into a box and having to adapt to whichever format I have to just because. So I like to have this flexibility. I like to be able to change things, adapt things, bring different things. And the ESA framework allows teachers to do this, to add their twist to the lessons, to add their spice to the lesson. And that's very, very special. So I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. I prepared a mind map for us today. If you are in my VIP WhatsApp group, please send me a message and I will make this PDF available, all right? But let me know if you want to receive it, this mind map with the steps and what each of them represent. So let me just find my mind map over here. I hope you guys are having a great Sunday. There we go. Yes. So let me start sharing here my screen with you. So the ESA framework, the why reason we have already covered. So why use the ESA framework? Because it is both coherent and organized, yet flexible. So it gives you the ability to adapt your creativity, to adapt your students' needs, depending on what you are looking for your lesson, what exactly you want to cover in your lesson. So you can use the ESA framework to adapt to every different situation you have or you may have in class. And the 3 main steps. So the first main step that we have, as I mentioned before, engage, study, and activate. The first one, the engage phase. What does the engage phase do? Exactly what it says. It's supposed to engage your students. It's supposed to have your students involved in the lesson, motivated to learn. The engage phase is the part in which we level down the emotional filter of our students. So it's usually something more fun, something lighter, something more communicative, telling a story, asking them about a story, showing images. So you're not being specific, but you are guiding your students, you are leading your students towards what you want, towards the topic you want to cover. And if you just related what I said here, you are leading your students, it's exactly that. It's what in the PPP framework, presentation, practice, production, it's the lead-in. Remember that we had lead-in, presentation, practice, production. This is the lead-in. So engage and lead-in are basically the same. The ESA framework is like a branch of the PPP framework. It's a little, it's the same yet different, comparing with the PPP framework. So the engage and the engage can also have different phases, and there are many characteristics that we can use in an engage phase, and you can do a lot of different activities in order to engage and motivate your students. You can use, as I mentioned, storytelling, so you can tell it either an anecdote about yourself, or you can present the story of a person, or you can show images, or you can ask your students questions. So the engage, it can be teacher-centered or student-centered. Preferably, it will be student-centered, since we are aiming at involving students as much as we can. And there is another part to the engage stage that I like very much, and that I believe is very important. That is what we call elicitation. And I'm going to go back a little bit just to tell you the difference between engage, lead-in, and warm-up. I know that many people say that they're the same thing, but in fact, the warm-up is a different stage. So warm-up is something we do before the engage part. Why, Deborah? How do I know the difference? The engage is always related to the topic you're going to present. So if you're going to talk about simple past, you will present, or you will tell a story that happened to you on the weekend, or you're going to tell something that happened to you when you were little, or you're going to show a picture of people in the past, or maybe they're going to listen to how things were done in the 80s. I don't know. There are many different things, many different ways to do that. But your engage will always be related to the topic you're going to teach. That doesn't happen to the warm-up. The warm-up might be related if you so desire, but it might not as well. So let's say you want to use your warm-up to review vocabulary you studied the previous class. That's a possibility. Let's say you want to use your warm-up to do something completely disconnected to what was taught last class and to what is being taught today. You can do that. So a warm-up is a lighter activity to get your students in the mood of speaking English, right? You get your students ready and warmed up. Yeah, it's just like when you go to the gym, then you need to warm up. That's exactly it. It's always an activity that has high energy to get them involved, to get them awake, to get them ready to learn, especially if you teach early in the morning. Yeah, so teachers who teach on Saturday, 8 a.m. I remember I always had to bring very interesting warm-ups because they were very sleepy. My students were sleepy. And sometimes at night, your students are tired. So bring an interesting warm-up. It can be funny. It can be something that will make them laugh, that will have them opening to that moment of learning, to that learning moment. That's very important. And in this way, this is how the warm-up differs from the engage and the lead-in stage. Remember, so warm-up might be connected to the lesson or not. Engage and lead-in are always connected to the lesson. And then another stage of the engage, another phase of the engage stage that's very important, it's called elicitation. Have you ever heard about elicitation? Let me know if you know what elicitation is. Elicitation is when you are understanding, you are paying attention, noticing what your students already know and what are the things you need to present to them. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna still use the example of simple past. You're gonna talk about simple past. You tell them, so what did you do yesterday? Teacher, I work. So I need to teach, I worked. Teacher, I go visit my family. Não é go, né, teacher? É went. Okay, so this student knows went. And then in the engage, you can already, in the engage phase, you can feel, you can observe, right? You can notice what your students know, what might be new for them, what you will need to refresh, what you need to present entirely to them. So it's a very good stage to have an idea of where exactly you're going to have to focus. Let's say, for example, and I always give this example, let's say you're talking about family members. You're going to present the topic of family members. So I usually bring a picture either of my family or a famous family from TV. I like bringing a picture of my family because students are especially curious about us as teachers. You know, they are surprised to know that there is a person behind the teacher, that this teacher has a family, this teacher does the laundry and everything. So I bring a picture of my family and I ask them, who do you think this is? Teacher, this is your sister. And who do you think this is? This is your grandfather. Who do you think this is? Teacher, this is your, como é que fala seu marido? This is your husband. Yes, this is your husband. Yes, so you see that this is something they didn't know. And the beauty of this framework is that everything is interconnected. So you don't need to stop one thing to move on to the next one. Just what I did like here now. I don't need to finish and say, okay, guys, so this is the end. Now open your books. Let's see the new words. No, I can integrate my study, which is the next one when I'm going to present the topic. So remember, engage. I'm just engaging my students, warming them up, getting them involved. The study phase is when the teacher actually presents content, actually gives instructions and shows how things work. But they are interconnected. There is this fluidity between one and the other. And this is really, really interesting. Having this interconnected in a way that students won't even feel the transition. This is very professional, right? This shows a lot of professionalism. This makes your class flow more naturally. It makes your students more comfortable in class. And then here in the example I gave to you, for example, this is my teacher, I don't know, so marido. Yes, my husband. And this one, it's the mom of your husband. Yes, so she's my, what is she? My mother-in-law. And you write on the board or on your Canva board, whatever you use to teach, but you write it down. And you are adding words or vocabulary or structure to what you're saying, already moving into what we call the study phase. The study phase, which is the presentation phase. The study phase is divided into two different stages. So we have here, let me open. I have to include one more here that comes even before, actually. So we have the presentation phase with the instructions. If you work with, for example, in my case, I work with deductive learning. So I have lots of examples and I help my students notice patterns. I help my students see and differentiate. Why do you think here we are using this structure and here we are using this structure? What is the difference? Do they carry the same meaning? Do they carry the same idea? Do they convey the same message? Yes, no, why? Where do these structures differ? Let's talk about it. So it's what we call inductive learning, right? We are inducing students to understand rather than just giving them everything ready for them to assimilate. We are guiding them through the learning process. And then here's the phase in this presentation phase where you give, again, the instructions, you help your students understand how that part of language works, be it vocabulary, be it grammar, be it pronunciation, whatever it is. For every aspect, for every point to be taught, there is a use for the ESA framework. Here, you can use text to present. You can use audio to present. You can use images to present. So you can use a lot of different examples. Yes, I love using examples to present. And from these elements, you are getting the sample language you want to work with. You know, you are guiding your students into the understanding of what is going on. So they are involved all the time. Do you see that we don't just look at the words or whatever it is that you're going to teach, and you just talk about that at length and let your students just be spectators of your show? That's not how it happens. That's not how it is supposed to happen. Even in the presentation phase, even in the study phase, it is very important that you keep your students engaged, that you keep your students involved in the process. So ask them questions, ask them to participate, ask them to give you examples, ask them if they see the difference, if they understand what you're talking about, if they can see how the two sentences compare, how similar they are, how different they are, what are the differences in terms of meaning. So keep your student involved all the time. And then we move on from the presentation, in which, again, with the help of your students, you are building up the content you're going to present. We move on to controlled practice. Controlled practice are activities, usually exercises. You can design the way that you prefer. I really like creating communication exercises. So communication gap activities are very interesting, but they do have some specific structures that they have to use. So why do we call it controlled practice? Because after all, you are in control. You are there guiding them. You design the exercise so that you know exactly what you want them to use. And here it's very important to be down to earth and not create something very something very far-fetched, you know, something that doesn't make sense. Because what I always dreaded when it comes to English schools, some English schools, not all of them, but some of them, they had something like this: ask fulano if they have an eraser, and then in their books they had no, but then the eraser was in their hands. Why on earth would you say no, I don't, if you're holding the goddamn eraser? Sorry for the bad word, but if you're holding the eraser, why would you say no, I don't? Of course you do, right? So if you do have it, allow your students to bring it to real life, right? To be genuine in what they're doing, to say things that are meaningful to them, that make sense to them, and that connect to their reality. So when you create your exercises, and here this structure of lesson is valid even if you are creating an activity from a leaflet, right? It doesn't matter what you use to create a lesson, it will work with this framework. So you get a leaflet, you do the engage, you do the study. When you create the activities, make sure you create activities real life based. Make sure you're not creating something your students would never say. Like the other day I saw a teacher, she sent me a post of Duolingo. The sentence on Duolingo was, the duck walked to the store, to the supermarket, something like this. The duck walked, I saw the duck walking to the supermarket. You know, like, why that? Why that? I saw the man walking to the supermarket. Okay, yes, it makes sense. But I saw the duck walking to the supermarket. You know, make it realistic. Not that you cannot be imaginary sometimes, but in these examples and these sort of things, like things that you want your students to produce, make sure you are not being too far-fetched, you know. Like, being imaginative is cool, but don't be over imaginative, because it becomes unrealistic and then your students may not connect. Like, why am I saying this? Remember, you will remember that when we used to learn the book is on the table, we got tired because the book's not on the table. Come on, the book's on the desk, not on the table. The book's not on the floor. But you had to keep repeating things that were meaningless. Make sure you don't do that to your students. Make sure you add an aspect of real life, of what's meaningful, of what's interesting to them, all right? And then what's important here is that in terms of controlled practice, you should have as many as needed, as many activities as needed. And the idea is that you go from more controlled to freer. You know what we do with children? They start being very controlled, yes, concealed in our world. And then we start letting them go little by little, opening them to the world. This is exactly what you're going to do with your students in your lessons. So you start giving them fewer options. So let's say, again, talking about simple past, you give them options like A or B. I go or I went. Gold, went. You know, they have to choose. So you guide them from more controlled to less controlled practice. And here, let's say, for example, simple past, which is a complex subject, you will need like 1, 2, 3 controlled practice, 4, as many as you feel that your students need until they are good to go. Why I say that? Because it is in this part, in the controlled practice, in the study phase, that you, as the teacher, are going to make the corrections. Now is where you're going to correct pronunciation. Now is where you're going to correct structure. Now you're going to correct usage. Now you're going to correct grammar in the study phase. So let your students have a lot of practice, as much practice as needed, so that you can help them solve all the problems they might have. The idea is that when they get to the activate phase, they have all these glitches ironed already, you know, they have all these minor instabilities corrected. They have all these things that may not make them feel comfortable already planned out, corrected, and ready to go to the next stage. So make sure you provide them with plenty of practice, plenty of active practice, so that they are more comfortable when they go to the activate phase. And when they move on to the activate phase, it's, as I told you, a freer practice. And why do I say freer practice and not free practice? Because it depends on the level of your students. If you work with basic students, they're not free yet. They don't have enough content to be free, right? So they need guidance. Their free practice will never be free practice because they don't have enough for that. They don't have vocabulary. They don't have enough background. They don't have enough structure to be free. So you will have to provide students with some elements in order to actually perform an activity that is freer. It can be a role play, it can be a communication gap activity, it can be a drawing game, it can be a lot of different things depending on what you're teaching, depending on the level of your students. However, if you teach like me, intermediate to advanced students, your practice can be free. So I can just, let's say I'm revising simple past and past perfect or present perfect, simple past and present perfect. And I can tell them, tell me about a situation, or tell your peer, tell your friend about a situation that happened to you 10 years ago. Anything. They can talk about anything, right? I'm just guiding them and telling them what I want them to work. I didn't even say use simple past. But they know that they will have to use because they have to talk about something that happened 10 years ago. Now talk to your friend about something you've never done. So they can again decide whatever it is they want to talk about, but they understand that they have to use the present perfect, right? So, and this strategy, this framework goes for all the ages, all the levels, and all the kinds of English that you work, either you regardless whether or not you work with business English, English for exams, basic English, intermediate, it doesn't matter. English for kids, for teens, it doesn't matter. This order will be suitable for whatever purpose you have. And again, the idea here is that you have a class that is, can you see my mouse moving? No, you can't. You have a class that is not linear, right? It's not, yes, you can. Yes, you can. The class is not linear. The class has its ups and downs. So you start with engage very with your energy level very high, and then you go to the study in which the energy goes a little bit lower, but you have the interaction all the time, but they're not as excited as they were in the beginning. Then you go to the controlled practice, they still keep the same level, and when they go to activate, you finish the class in a high again, so that your students will be excited, will be eager and ready to come to their next session, right? So it's very important. Not always does it have to be a game or something like that, a discussion, right? Something that will make your students actually put into practice everything they have learned in that specific session, and also the previous ones, the ones that you have already, things you've already worked on. This is also important, you know, this piling up, right? Scaffolding, piling up things. But giving them this opportunity to use what they have learned in this class in a more freer situation, give your students that feeling of accomplishment. And another very important thing, bring this to their mind, you know, call their attention to this. Say, guys, look, in the beginning of the class, remember I asked you and you didn't know this, and this. Look at how you're doing it now. Can you see how well you're talking about it? Can you see how well you are developing this topic? Tell me, what was your favorite thing that you learned today? And help them see their progress. Because what happens very often is that students, they say, teacher, I don't feel like I'm learning, but that's because they are not paying attention. They have very high expectations and very little feedback or very little attention to their learning process. We don't learn. We never learned how to assess our own learning. And having a teacher to point out and say, listen, remember that in the beginning of the class, you were saying use it to, and now you're saying used to. Look at that. Congratulations, you did a great job. And by doing this, you will encourage and motivate your student even more to come back to your next class. So these are the 3 steps for English Study Activate Framework. Of course, there are others, but this is the one that I was trained to work with and that I really found the most suitable for my reality, for the reality of my students. And it really, really, really gives good results, right? There are scientific studies that prove that the ESA framework facilitates learning in terms of retention, in terms of students' comfort when they are in the learning process. So this is something that I strongly advise teachers to use because it will give you a logical sequence to follow and also a structure for your students, but also flexibility. You can add different aspects, different activities. You can vary your input. You can vary your output. It just depends on how you are going to structure this class. I hope you have enjoyed this session today. If you want to receive this mind map, go to my VIP WhatsApp group. Follow me on Instagram at Débora Desotti ELT. Find me there on Instagram, getting my VIP WhatsApp group, and send me a message because I'm going to send you the mind map of the session today. I hope you have enjoyed, and